Again to Educator.com, it's a reading comprehension course, and we're continuing in with our nonfiction reading and how we can actually read complete books instead of simply just essays and stuff like that on SATs. This lesson is called The Demanding Reader. So, to go over this is what we're going to do. We are going to learn how to judge a book by its cover. And I really do mean that in a very literal sense. We're going to judge a book by its cover. Then we're going to go over what the catcher asks. We're going to talk about what it means to really own a book, and then 3 types of note-taking. Here is a book's cover. This is a book called The Deathly Hallows Lectures by John Granger. You can look at it right here. Now, first thing I'm going to notice about this is that it also has a subtitle. And the subtitle reads, and if you can't read it here, that's okay. The subtitle reads as follows: The Hogwarts Professor Explains Harry Potter's Final Adventure by John Granger. So, what do I expect to hear about in this book? Well, I'm definitely going to be hearing about the Deathly Hallows, but then I'm going to hear a professor explain it. One thing I also notice is that in this title there is the word lectures. Now, lectures are normally kind of what I'm doing right now, where it's just a teacher speaking and the students and listeners are just kind of writing down, following along, and taking notes. So I suspect that probably this book is a collection of lectures written down for people to read instead of listen to. On the back of the book, we have the following: John Granger, the Hogwarts professor, has spoken about the meaning and magic of Harry Potter at major universities from coast to coast and is a keynote speaker at fan conventions in the United States and Canada. Now, how much do I know about this guy? Well, I know that he's put a lot of work into doing this, and I know that he's very popular, and I know that this is kind of what he does. That might give me a little bit more clue about what I could find inside the book. Now, judging a book by its cover also means looking at the table of contents. So, if I'm going to just skim a book to figure out what it's all about and what I really want to read, I'm just going to skim the table of contents, and here they are. Chapter 2, Unlocking the Deathly Hallows. We got 5 keys to understand the last Harry Potter novel. Furthermore, we have Chapter 3, we have this article called Choosing to Believe, and this is about the Christian content in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Chapter 4 is Snape's Green-Eyed Girl. We have Dante, the Renaissance, Florence, and the death of the Potions Master. Now, if I'm just reading these, I'm learning to judge the book by its cover by getting a better feel of kind of, well, what's this book all about? Now, why on earth do we judge a book by its cover? Well, we go through this process because when we're researching, when we're reading, when we're going to the library, when we're picking off books, we know that even in our lifetime, we're not going to read everything. And so we're going to judge a book by its cover and just kind of pick out what books might be most relevant to us and what's most important and kind of what's going to help us out the most. And we're going to do that in this very, very short way. So, interestingly enough, reading is a lot like being a catcher, as you may remember from the previous lecture. So the catcher is going to ask questions in his mind of the book as he's reading it. Do you remember the questions for the essays? We got who, what, why, where, when, and how. So, if you go through reading all of those, you can keep on remembering those as you're reading. And if you've read through the essays, you should already be in the habit of doing that. But when we talk about books, there are 4 major questions that we also have to make sure that we ask. And we're going to be going over these for the rest of this lecture, so write all these down if you can. First big question is we got to know, what is the book about as a whole? What is this book about as a whole? Well, what's the Deathly Hallows about? What's the Deathly Hallows lectures about? Well, probably lectures about the Deathly Hallows. What is being said in detail and how? Okay, and once we've read the book and we've read a couple chapters, we're going to pay attention to those important details, those things that keep coming up, and we'll figure out how we're going to answer that question. This last one, 3 we can only answer after we've sufficiently answered 1 and 2. Is the book true in whole or in part? Don't believe everything you read, and I'll explain why later. And then finally, we're just going to ask, well, what of it? Not just what of it to me, but what of it to the author, and what of it to society, what of it to science, what of it to literature? What of it? Why did the author think that writing this book was so important?